Okay, so what I will talk about is why is there a new version of Vue InstantSearch? And in fact, that question can be answered by the same question. Why is there a new version of anything? Because new versions, they kind of suck, and we want to have them only when we need them. So why would you want a new version? The first reason is to remove things, because you cannot have new, at least major versions in this case, a new removal of something without having a major version, because people depend on it and you can't simply remove things. The second one is when you want to change stuff, when you want to rename something to something else, maybe it has a typo. For example, the HTTP referrer header has had a typo in it for all the time it existed, and nobody ever made a major version of this, so it still exists. A next version would be to rewrite things, but it's actually a pretty bad reason, a really bad reason, because rewriting things just for the sake of rewriting it, or because you don't like the previous version, is not going to solve any bugs. I've worked on two major versions at Algolia. The first one is of our JavaScript API client, and the second one is of Vue InstantSearch. In case for a quick reminder, the way that these are aligned in our stack is you have the Algolia engine on one side. It communicates with the JavaScript engine. Then you have the helper, and then which is just some JavaScript. And then after that, you have Vue InstantSearch. Let's talk about the first rewrite. This was a project that took about 2 months last year and was never finished. The reason why it was never finished will be explained later, but let's first go with the reasons why we wanted a major version in the first place. The first one is code size. The library of the JavaScript API client was pretty big. It's about 50 kilobytes. That doesn't sound that much, but that's gzipped, that's compressed, that's minified. That's a big number. The major reason why it is this big is because it supports lots of browsers. The second reason why we want a next major version is for request options. Request options was a new thing we wanted to add to every single method, which allows us to add specific headers. You want anything you want. And finally, we also wanted to refresh the API. Now let's compare that to the reasons for a new version of Vue InstantSearch. The first one is new features, because originally Vue InstantSearch was made as a small little hack to find out if it was possible. It was possible, and then because of that, now we have a library that we have to support and maintain. But we never really made all of the features made available in InstantSearch.js, nor in the other InstantSearch versions, as well as for maintenance. In Vue InstantSearch, we chose to say, okay, what about all these names? Are they good names? Are they bad names? And we choose to change some, we choose to keep some, we choose to merge some components into different components. In the end, this was a very useful experiment to find out which names we liked and which names were not good, but we couldn't find a better alternative for, and which new names are possible. Finally, we also wanted to refresh the API of Vue InstantSearch because, well, as said earlier, not only did it not have all widgets, also each of the widgets were slightly hindered by lack of options to change them in. The reason why this major version did work and the previous one of the V4 of the JavaScript API client did not was because of InstantSearch.js. InstantSearch.js is a library that basically sits until that point at the same level of abstraction after the helper bundle. And it is made for vanilla JavaScript. It's using React behind the scenes, or actually Preact, a smaller version of it, but it doesn't really matter for users. The users will just call a function and it will make their widgets and whatever. And what we thought is, wouldn't it be interesting if we did not just put all of this logic to make it into the DOM, but we just did the logic that was necessary for this widget alone. Like if you click on something, not the actual click handler, but if you click on something, this and that will happen, these facets will change, and blah, blah, blah. So we decided to put this, to switch up the InstantSearch.js library in two things. The first one was the existing widgets API, and the second one is all of the business logic of that API and take into a separate API called the connectors. Because of these connectors, because of the renderless bit of all of the logic of each widget, now it's possible to just reuse all this logic we already have and then make the Vue InstantSearch just the view, just the specific things necessary to make a DOM within Vue and be very friendly to the ecosystem, but not needing to deal with all the fact, oh, if you need to make a hierarchical list, how does that work again? You need to get all the items first, and then you need to do a second query. Now we put all of this logic inside InstantSearch.js, and we only need to write it once. So you heard my reasoning for why Vue InstantSearch works. Now you're thinking, I still want to rewrite. I want to rewrite a specific part of my code. I don't like it. The first answer is always going to be no. You should not rewrite just because you don't like something. Because you go from problems you know to problems you don't know. Because you will just find them out after the fact that now, because of your new way of handling things, people with a different currency cannot use your app anymore, which is kind of annoying. But you didn't know it about on beforehand because you, without knowing about it, you already dealt with it. And now when you rewrite it, you forgot about this small thing that you did last time, or you did something completely different, and now this or that use case is not possible anymore. So that's something you want to avoid always. The next reason is because you lose time. If you rewrite just to rewrite, at the end of the day, you will have spent X amount of time to get the same result as users had before. The reason why you do want to do a rewrite is if you do it incrementally. If you're able to continue shipping features on the old version as well as on the new version, and even more ideally, if there's only one code base. It's not always possible. Sometimes you do need to have two code bases, which evolve at their own pace. But the goal is at the end to only have one code base. The next one is if it can actually be done. Sometimes you literally cannot do a major version. And that is when people are relying on specific kind of ways that say, oh, there's only one version. And then what are you going to do? For example, that's one of the other reasons why the the JavaScript client could not get rewritten. It's because when we did the previous major version, we added this magic bit of code. Let's step one step earlier, before we added the magic code. We had the next version of the library, and nothing worked anymore. There were people complaining, and people crying, and customers that were on the phone, and everybody was very mad. And the reason why everybody was very mad is because they made a mistake. Not we, they. Unfortunately, the customer is always right. And what happened was there's this URL to load the library, which has /latest in it. And that was actually what we documented all the time. So maybe it was our fault after all. But the idea is that if you have some kind of mechanism for an automatic update, even over major versions, you're going to have to cry at some point and fix this. So the magic bit of code literally goes through all the DOM tags, the script tags in your DOM, sees if it has the /latest one as href, and if it does, it doesn't load the library. it adds a new script tag and adds the old version of the library. Because of the way that the v4 was made without realizing that was a thing, we realized that yes, that it wasn't possible to make a major version. The next thing why it still is interesting to make a major version or something from scratch is because you have the blank canvas to be experimenting in. The goal is here to just get the new ideas, just get what you want to learn, and then just scrap it. Just forget about it, but you have the ideas. And then you can incrementally put these ideas one by one in your existing version without needing a complicated major version. An easy major version is also possible just by deprecating some things for a while and then removing them. And that's it. And that's why you need to have a clear plan. So why we failed in the first version is also why you can succeed. Why you failed is because we didn't have a plan. We had a vague plan somewhere, but we forgot about these last steps, about wait, how is this actually going to work? And the second one is, can you actually do it? And we couldn't. But with Vue InstantSearch, we can. To end on a positive note about Vue InstantSearch, now with the new version, it will be possible to have all of the widgets of InstantSearch.js, styling built in because the class names are the same as are they supposed to be, a better way of customizing widgets without needing to rewrite from scratch, consistent class names, and better documentation. Questions? Well, you can find me afterwards anyway, or on Slack. Oh, yes.
Hey, thanks for the presentation. You talked mostly about technical concerns regarding versioning.
Mm-hmm.
What's your take on the assumption people will have by seeing new major versions also? That it can be seen as a communication hack sometimes in some ways. So do you think there are also like, maybe not marketing, but community considerations to have in mind when considering new versions?
Yes, there's definitely community considerations. I touched on it a bit earlier, is that if you don't have a clear way for people to upgrade to the next version, they're going to be confused and they're going to be stuck with the previous version, or they think they're running behind, but your previous version is just fine. So a major version should only ever be released when it's straightforward how to upgrade to it. And then next to it, of course, a bigger number is better. You can release about it, you can tweet about it and all these things. So if you have a clear strategy and a clear plan, a major version is a good thing.
Thanks.